Hello everyone, welcome to the Green Heart of York podcast from St Nick's. This podcast series has been funded through a grant from Nominate UK. My name is Ellie Stead and I'm the CEO at St Nick's and the host of our podcast series, the Green Heart of York podcast. Today's session will help people to better understand how volunteering can benefit individuals, organisations and communities. Hopefully, it will encourage people to volunteer knowing that barriers can be addressed and broken down, and there is something out there for everyone, even if that isn't necessarily at St Nick's. Today's podcast is about volunteering. We'll chat all about the positives of volunteering, why people volunteer in the first place, and try to bust some myths about volunteering too. Welcome to today's podcast, the next one in the St Nick's podcast series. I'm joined here today by a lovely gang of people who have volunteering at the heart of what they do every single day. So from St Nick's, I have Maria. Maria, welcome to our podcast today. Maria, you've had and still have a long history of working with volunteers on a day-to-day basis at St Nick's.
I do, yeah, and it's a pleasure.
Great stuff. And last but not least, we have Holly Hennell, Manager of York Cares.
Morning.
So we'll dive straight into it. I have a series of prompts and thoughts and questions to get us talking all about the value and benefit and positive aspects of volunteering. So the first question I'm going to put out there is, why do people actually volunteer? And Maria, I'm going to come to you first. From your experience, what are the reasons that sort of lead people to come and get engaged with us?
Well, I think I could probably spend half an hour alone just talking about this particular question, because there are so many reasons why people volunteer. A lot of our volunteers at St Nick's are keen to get a bit of experience in the field. So we get people who'll come and do bits of conservation work or bits of ecological survey and monitoring, because it's quite a hard field to get into. And so if you've got a bit of volunteering experience, it kind of lays the groundwork for the next steps after volunteering. It gives them a bit of a head start if they maybe want to look at a career in the field. And then we get a lot of people who just want to give back to their community and want to do something rewarding, but something a bit satisfying, and they might live locally or local to one of our many sites now across York, and they just want to take a bit of ownership of their local patch, do some good.
Fantastic. I might circle back to you on that in terms of the different types of volunteering, because maybe people have got a particular view of, you know, what would be involved, but actually there's quite a different variety of different sessions and types of activity available to them. Mm-hmm. Obviously, some people will volunteer just in a personal capacity, but lots of companies do encourage volunteering and connection and engagement with the local community. And I know, Holly, that'll be something that you're very, very close to. So what's your experience on this, Holly?
I think, like Maria, there's just such a whole host of reasons for people wanting to volunteer. And I think one of the biggest motivators is that kind of real, genuine wanting to make a difference, give something back to the community. I think from my experience, obviously, we work with employers in the city, so they're part of our charity, we're their member organisations, and for the most part, those employers will give their staff a number of days where they can go out into the community and volunteer, which is such a massive resource for the city. And I think there's all sorts of different reasons why people want to get out there. I think in terms of sort of pre and post-COVID, we've seen a massive surge post-COVID, and I think there's a real kind of push around well-being, and the importance that kind of volunteering has around supporting positive well-being, and particularly within companies. And I think we've certainly seen engagement through our employee volunteers in that kind of wanting to be able to go out, particularly doing stuff outdoors, and get out into nature. And we all know the benefits of being outside, and what that brings. And I think for employers, because of hybrid working, I think a lot of people have perhaps felt a little bit isolated if they're working from home, and having those opportunities to actually go out into the community and do something with a group of people, and that might be your colleagues or it might be other people, but just those connections, because I think we've lost quite a lot of that sort of, people working from home and not necessarily going into the office as often, and not having those physical connections, face-to-face meetings with people, and those opportunities now to be able to actually get together through volunteering. And I think that kind of there are so many benefits to that, and we've certainly seen employers using volunteering to engage their teams, so bringing them together because they're not getting together in the office, particularly for things like induction for new members of staff who maybe don't actually meet some of the teams that they're working with. So all sorts of different reasons, and I think we are so fortunate in York. I think there's such a real sense of community and people wanting to be able to give back and to make a difference.
Yeah, and that nature connectedness and being outdoors and active, I would, advise listeners to take a look at our other podcast on that topic as well. Obviously, in York, at this time of year, we've had a fair amount of rain. And I just wondered, are our volunteers as hard and as willing in the wet weather as they are in the dry, sunnier kind of climes? Not that you can predict that throughout any point in the year, but what's everybody's kind of experience in terms of, are they willing to get stuck in even when it's fairly bleak out there?
Yeah, nothing stops our volunteers. They were out in the snow the other week, still quite happily siding and coppicing. Yeah, they're extremely hardy.
Holly, do you see the same?
Yeah, I think we've seen a shift, definitely. I think there was probably less hardiness pre-COVID. We'd often get that, it's raining and we're still volunteering. Yes, you are. But I think since COVID, that, we all got used to being outdoors, didn't we? Because that was the only way we could see people. And I think people have become a lot more hardy and are much more willing to be outdoors. Traditionally for us, with our environment and sustainability programme, it was quite seasonal, so tended to be much more popular during the spring and summer months when it was traditionally warmer, but you can't predict what the weather's like at the moment, can you? But we have volunteers all year round now, and we've had volunteers right up until Christmas, and then again right from the start of January. So yeah, definitely, I think people are willing to go out in all weathers.
Oh, that's fantastic.
One of our volunteers recently said to me, "There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes."
Absolutely.
And I think that exact quote has been used on one of our other podcasts as well. So I think for any outdoor work, it's kind of a common theme. Maria, tell me just a little bit about the types of volunteering at St Nick's for anybody who might not know the different sort of sessions and activities that we've got on.
Yeah, there's quite a lot going on at St Nick's at the moment. So we have quite a few sessions that are focused on improving our natural habitats around York. We've got quite a few different sites across the city now. We've still got our flagship site at St Nick's, but spreading out a little bit along Tankhall, Baldwick Beck, so working in Holbrook Park and beyond, but then also working on the River Ouse and the River Foss as well. So areas along Fulford, Millennium Bridge, Fulford Ings, and on the River Foss as well. So lots of practical, hands-on, muddy boot kind of sessions where people can come and improve the habitats in those areas for the benefit of wildlife, but for people as well. As we've touched on, after COVID, people, I think, do appreciate our natural areas more because there was such a long period where we had very limited access to them. And so I think looking at that benefit of habitat improvement work for both our environment, for wildlife, but for our community as well is really important. So people can come and get involved in that hands-on practical conservation work. But we do also have that other side to what we do of kind of ecological surveying and monitoring. So what I think can happen sometimes is you get very excited about doing habitat improvement work, that you just want to dive straight in. But actually, it's really important to go and assess the habitat, see what's there first, get some baseline data, and then continue to monitor any changes within the environment so that you know the work that you're doing is kind of having the right effect. So it's a lot of looking at the habitat, doing surveys to monitor the habitat, or it might be looking at a specific species. We do lots of water vole surveys to kind of assess how they're getting on along our rivers. And it's just making sure that the work that we're doing is having the intended effect. So there's a lot of focus at the moment on citizen science in general, because it's a really good way of collecting data. And it's in a very accessible way. You don't need a background in ecology to be able to put on a sighting that you've seen something exciting. You can just upload that onto iRecord or something like that. Anyone can do it. So it's a really good way of collecting data. So we do a lot of kind of citizen science, as well as the kind of more focused ecological survey and monitoring as well. So we're always keen to get volunteers involved in that side of things.
You anticipated my question, which was going to be, what sort of experience do you need on the citizen science side? So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the benefits to individuals, about coming out and volunteering in and around the area of York. But how do our organisations benefit from people getting engaged and getting stuck in and donating their time and energy? Holly, from your point of view, obviously you've done some literally big community challenges that have brought people together over periods of time for very sort of specific initiatives or to achieve certain impact. So what kind of benefits do you see, whether it's for your organisation or for the wider community, and kind of how that impacts that community?
Yeah, so I think for us, obviously, most of the organisations that we're working with, they're voluntary community, social enterprise organisations. We all know the financial situation at the moment. Most of those organisations are probably fairly under-resourced, and being able to have a kind of an input of volunteers makes such a huge difference, because a lot of the tasks that our volunteers are getting involved in maybe wouldn't happen if those volunteers weren't doing those tasks. So it's such a huge resource. And I think for employers, kind of from an organisational perspective for them, they've got their staff going out into the community, perhaps learning new skills or putting their existing skills into practice in a different way, and then bringing that back into the organisation. I think staff come back more motivated. So I think there's huge amounts of benefits of that. And I think also bringing organisations together and creating those connections that maybe wouldn't necessarily happen, and particularly for things where you've mentioned the big community challenge, we're bringing lots of employers together. Organisations that might not work alongside each other normally are coming together to make a difference in the city, and kind of the buzz that you see from people being able to do that, and the tangible difference that they kind of see that they've made. I think it's such a huge impact. I mean, certainly the big community challenge last year, and obviously we worked in partnership with St Nick's and with the City of York Council and other organisations as well, and just kind of the impact that we had bringing all those organisations together across lots of different sites in the city was absolutely huge.
Fantastic. So, Maria, from the St Nick's angle, how do you see the benefit? Obviously for us, as Holly mentioned, being in third sector, resources always been challenging and tight, but from the community point of view, because I know that we do lots of engagement with lots of different community groups across York.
Yeah, it's a huge part of engaging with the community, having the volunteers involved. I mean, that they are representing the community as well, some of them. So having them involved in what we do is a really important part of our project. And then when you think of how the work that the volunteers do then impacts the community, it's huge. And I think the community, or people from the community, your local dog walkers, they might not always realise how much of an impact the volunteers have had, because they see the area improved, and they might not necessarily think about how it's been improved or who's done that work. They just see this lovely, vibrant green space, but actually that's all been done with the help of volunteers who have dedicated their time and energy into supporting a charity or going out with a team from work and dedicating a full day of their time to help the local community and support our local area. So it's really important, and it has massive benefits on the community. I mean, that's just from a St Nick's point of view and thinking about the work that we do, but obviously there's loads of different volunteer opportunities out there, you know, things like Move the Masses and, you know, people who'll go and support people who are maybe isolated, you know, all of these people, volunteers, giving up their time to support their local community and bringing people together. Yeah, it's a massive, huge benefit on the community. And I don't think it's always seen. It's just, you know, we would never take volunteers for granted. I mean, they're such an important part of what we do. We couldn't do our work without them. Literally, they've helped St Nick's grow from having our little nature reserve and managing that to this huge project that we've got across the city, and they're the ones helping us deliver it. So yeah, they're amazing, and so grateful for all the help and support that they give us. And then that has a huge knock-on effect for the community as well.
It's interesting that you say Move the Masses. I was on the reserve just last week, having attended some sighted guide training with guide dogs a couple of weeks ago in connection with Move the Masses. And there was somebody actually helping a local resident who had had some medical issues walk through the reserve for the first time. And we had such a great chat about how he, as a volunteer, was really enjoying the outdoor space, how the person that he was helping, you know, was just loving walking around the reserve. They were using the Merlin app to see what birds were out there. And we talked quite a lot about different things that we had going on. So I think it's really interesting and quite important to make sure the charities, you know, where they can, connect, you know, around those volunteering opportunities, because there are certainly links and connections to be made, I think, where, you know, we have got a wonderful reserve that people can walk around, that from a sensory point of view for people who are sight impaired, you know, with somebody to guide them, because obviously it is a bit muddy everywhere in York at the moment. That person had some sight issues as well as other things, and he had such a wonderful time just walking around the reserve and listening and seeing, you know, different things. So I think that's really important. And that ties into another point. At St Nick's, we've done quite a lot of work, both through our website and through other means, to try and improve accessibility for people into the reserve. Maria did a great series of videos about what it takes to manage our reserve, which you can access through a GPS trail through the reserve, or you can see it on our website on the Visit Us Virtually section. So if you want to know a bit more about that, take a look at the website. But how do we help to overcome barriers around accessibility, or what kind of means and mechanisms can we offer to help people to get engaged? And again, it might not be necessarily the things that you are all doing individually. It might be other things that you're aware of in and around York. How do we make it accessible to as many people as possible? Holly, how about you? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will always try and look at what tasks we've got and then adapt those if we've got people who are unable to kind of participate in certain tasks because of certain abilities. So we'll look at kind of what they do. You know, we'll try and ensure if it's a team that's wanting to come out and there's one or two people in the team who maybe would struggle with some of the activities, we'll look at what other things they could do, but to still make sure that they can actually take part as a team and they've got those connections. And we obviously offer a whole host of different opportunities. So it's not just out in the environment. We've got other activities that we deliver kind of in community centres, in schools, working with older and younger people, so we can offer different range of opportunities if something isn't particularly suitable for somebody because they've maybe got physical impairments and they can't kind of actively get involved in some of those things. So we'll try and make sure that we've got something that they can get involved in. But I think it's about us all working together, isn't it, and looking at, okay, right, if we haven't got a task that's suitable, well, who else might have a task that's suitable, and signposting to other organisations. And I think that's why it's really important that kind of we all do work together and we know kind of other things that are happening in the city, and we're all aware of the different volunteering opportunities that are offered, whoever that might be through, and that if we haven't got something suitable, we can say, well, but we know that, you know, St Nick's or City Field Council or whoever it might be have got opportunities that might suit better. So, you know, signpost to those opportunities.
Yeah, and I'll come to you, Maria. Just as a thought, obviously our ecotherapy programme, that runs different activities for people, you know, to keep them in good mental health. But we do see some transition kind of out of those groups and into our more mainstream sort of volunteer activities. So I suppose it's not just that physical impairment. It might be if someone is neurodiverse or, processes in a different way. So I think it's about how we accommodate and remain mindful of those types of challenges as well, not just maybe the more kind of obvious ones. Maria, you've seen some of those sort of transitions, and how does that feel from your point of view in terms of accessibility?
Yeah, I think there's a misconception around volunteering of you've got to be this very kind of healthy, active person to be able to get involved, but it's not the case. And I think if there's a particular cause or charity that you'd like to support, I think it's always worth getting in touch with that organisation to see what they can do for that person, because generally, charities like us do need the extra support, and so we'll try and make sure that person can come and get involved because it's mutually beneficial. And so if it is something like a kind of practical task day, we generally do have kind of several activities that can be done depending on people's kind of ability level, even just things like a litter pick. You don't have to be out for ages. It doesn't have to be a long walk. You don't have to pick up anything heavy, but just picking up a few crisp wrappers and bottles and things like that is so helpful. When you've got groups out together, that moral support, particularly if it is a wet day or something like that, it's really important. Just bringing out some biscuits, something like that can be great for people. And yeah, it has been quite lovely working at St Nick's and seeing people who maybe have moved from ecotherapy into volunteering and kind of watching them progress, starting off with kind of, something quite low level and then building up a lot of it's confidence, not even ability. It's just kind of building up that confidence and watching people kind of grow and flourish. And often you'll have volunteers who maybe have been doing it a little bit longer and do feel a bit more confident, or maybe are a bit more mobile or a bit more have a kind of higher ability, who are really happy to support other people who maybe are a bit new to it, or lower ability level, just needs a little extra helping hand, and other volunteers will be happy to support those people as well. So I think it's always worth people getting in touch to see what's out there. We have, admin opportunities for people if they don't want to get out and do the kind of practical work. Bit of data entry, that's so helpful. Someone like me hates that kind of thing. So if someone else is keen and willing, I will snap them up on that offer. So there's lots of different ways that people can get involved. And I think there is just that misconception around I might not be able to do something for that organisation. But I think there's always a way.
And just a reminder for anybody on the St Nick's website, you've got a widget on the bottom right-hand corner. And if you have any challenges in viewing the content on the website, then just click on the widget and it gives you a multitude of different ways that you can flip or view the content differently to make it a little bit easier for you to navigate and read through what opportunities are on there. I'm going to switch next into, we've mentioned and we've touched on this about corporate volunteering. Now, from my previous life, that was something that I actively encouraged and actually had responsibility for quite a long time in my previous organisation. And it's interesting because there is so much talk now in companies' annual reports about commitment to community and ESG, and it's interesting how many organisations actually walk the talk. It's not just a statement in their annual report. They do engage with the local community. They do offer resources for different things, whether that's the practical volunteering things or whether they enable wider volunteering opportunities for the type of things that you've mentioned, Maria, which might be admin-based rather than kind of outdoors-based. I'm kind of interested in that kind of corporate point of view and what engagement you have. Obviously, Holly, you've got tons of this. So do you see a shift in this in terms of the willingness to get engaged and those corporates seeing the benefit so they are walking the talk and it's not kind of a greenwashing exercise?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that probably has shifted over the years. And I think for us as an organisation, if we ever get a corporate who's just doing it as a tick box exercise, it doesn't work, because they've got to want to make a difference. And we're very fortunate in York. We've already talked about that. I mean, we work with over 30 employers now in the city, and all of those employers that we work with are genuinely doing it because they want to make a difference, not just for kind of in the community, but also in terms of the benefits that that has on their staff, and then the knock-on benefits that that has for the organisation. And I think, you know, being able to make those connections really locally, and that's what we're all about, is, you know, what opportunities are there available in their locality where those organisations are based, where they can actually make a difference. They can make the connections with the local community, and then that kind of has a knock-on effect, doesn't it? Because then they start to make, you know, see the long-term impacts that they can have working with the community and what difference they can make. But I think, yeah, we're just incredibly fortunate in York that we've got employers that want to make a difference. And I think there's so many different opportunities and so many different ways that they can get involved in the community. And they might want to focus on kind of education, they might want to focus on environment, whatever it might be, but there are ways in which they can get involved.
And Maria, we offer kind of corporate volunteering days. What type of things do we typically see, and why do companies come to us?
Generally because they have that opportunity to get out of the office. They want a day where they can work together as a team. As Holly mentioned before, since COVID, often you're not together as a team in the office as much anymore. So it's a really nice opportunity to actually get together, spend the day together, a bit of team building. But I think they come to us because they genuinely do want to make a difference and have that positive impact. Because it can be difficult when you're in an office all day and you can look out the window and see the outside, but you can't do much to contribute towards it. So I think it is a really nice opportunity for teams to get out, have that make that positive difference, but have the opportunity to do it together as well. And I love running a corporate away day session because it's just a very different atmosphere. People are generally very excited and keen and just throw themselves into it. It's a really nice atmosphere. So yeah, they're great sessions to run.
I'm going to ask each of you, how can people find out about the volunteering through each of your respective organisations? And what would you say to them if they're a bit hesitant or thinking of volunteering? I suppose that's whether it's an individual or whether it's a corporate. Maria, how can they find out about what's going on at St Nick's?
They can have a little look on our website, or they can email one of our Green Corridors team directly. We're a friendly bunch, happy to chat to people. And I would say to someone who's hesitant to give it a go. I think there's nothing lost in giving it a go. And I think it can only benefit someone. I think the individual, the organisation, the community, there's only positive things to come out of it. And the thing with volunteering is you are a volunteer. There's no commitment. If you find that it's not for you, that's absolutely fine. You're not tied down to anything. So I think I would say just give it a chance, dive in. With St Nick's, we have some weekend sessions so people can come and just drop in. Don't have to sign up or anything beforehand. It's just come and see if you like it. And then if they do, they can have a little look at some of our more regular sessions. And for an organisation as well, I think it is such a good opportunity to get together as a team, have that positive impact in the community. I think there's just no downside to it.
Fantastic. And Holly, how about you? And how about what's on the calendar for the rest of this year? Because I know, obviously, you've mentioned the seasonality, but there's also, I think, some things that people could keep an eye out for, perhaps.
Absolutely, yeah. So in terms of looking for information, have a look on our website, so yorkcares.co.uk. Follow us on social media at York Cares. I think, like Maria said, give it a go. And if people are a bit unsure, we've got testimonials and case studies on the website from people who've been out into the community and volunteered. Just read some of those, because you'll see from that the difference that people have felt afterwards and kind of the positive vibes that come from that. And just have a go and see what's happening. In terms of things that are coming up, it's quite exciting for us. So our big community challenge, which happens annually, has been growing over the last few years. And last year was our biggest challenge yet. So we had over 500 volunteers throughout the month of June, and the impact of that was just absolutely phenomenal. We've moved it this year, so it'll be taking place between September and October. Obviously, again, working in partnerships with yourselves at St Nick's, with City of York Council, and then with other organisations across the city. The idea at the moment, and it's kind of still in its infancy in terms of what's happening, but we're looking at kind of changing landscapes across the city and how we connect things through green corridors, obviously linking with yourselves, and looking at potentially kind of a route from the university into the city centre, and the different spaces that we can work on in that. In June, we'll have an Environment and Sustainability Week, which will be with a whole kind of host of different partners, potentially working with some partners that we haven't worked with before as well, so kind of making those connections and bringing things together, and that will all be leading up to what happens in September and October, and the plan is hopefully to engage even more volunteers this year, and make a bigger impact.
And I know that in the year just gone, the university obviously played a huge part. Are they going to be engaged again?
Yeah, absolutely. So
year?
Obviously last year it was the 60th anniversary of the university. We're housed at the university, so obviously we wanted to support that. And in terms of the university being a university for public good, we wanted to be able to support them in how they kind of demonstrate their impact in the community. But yeah, absolutely wanting to look at kind of, that was why I mentioned the route from the university into the city centre. So there will be opportunities probably on campus again, and then kind of in the locality around the university, and then leading into the city.
And for any students out there listening, just a reminder, we have a student session that runs on a Wednesday afternoon every week. So if you fancy dipping your toe in the water, you can always come and try us out at St Nick's. But I'd like to kind of bring this episode to a close and just thank all of our guests. I think this is the happiest, most positive vibe episode we've recorded so far. So I think if you've not got the message, listen to this podcast all over again. But better yet, go out there and see what opportunities might suit you. Give it a try. Like we said, you've absolutely nothing to use, just every benefit to gain, both for you and your community as well. So thanks for listening. Massive thank you to everybody that's listening, watching and reading this episode of the podcast. And a huge thank you to our great guests for another fantastic episode. For more information, be sure to check out our website at stnicks.org.uk and check out our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram and LinkedIn. Don't forget to check the socials and websites of all of our guest organisations too, where you'll find even more information that's been discussed on our podcast series. That's it for another episode of the Green Heart of York podcast from St Nick's. Thanks for watching, reading, listening. Do come back and see us next time for the next episode, or take a look back at our previous episodes. And we hope you all keep the Green Heart of York beating out there. Hi, this is Ellie Stead, CEO of St Nick's, signing off. Please continue to watch future podcasts, but your host will be different. It'll either be members of the St Nick's team or the new CEO. Enjoy!